When insulin is at the right levels, nobody calls it evil. I've never known insulin to be anything but the hormone that puts weight on my patients, that ages their brains, that crystallizes their arteries.
The diagnosis of insulin resistance means the rules have changed in your body, and what might have worked to keep fat off in your younger years no longer works.
Skin tags does not even make the list, but when they accidentally fall off, it's like, I've had those things forever. And I'm saying that was your warning. That was one warning that your body was making excessive insulin.
Meet Dr. Annette Bosworth, Dr. Boz, a top nutrition and functional health expert and best-selling author. She is a recognized leader in the alternative health field and a pioneer of the ketogenic lifestyle movement. In this video, we distill the essence of her teachings and highlight the fastest way to reverse insulin resistance and heal diseases through her top 3 rules and 5 recommended foods.
First, easiest thing that you can see across the room is anybody with a skin tag. If they've got their hair up and they've got a skin tag on the back of their neck, they say, oh, it's from my collar. I'm like, no, it's your collar plus insulin that's been around for a long time. And they're like, oh, it's from my seams under my armpits. I'm like, no, it's from the insulin. And then maybe your seam is stimulating it. Meaning the friction that happens in the places where you grow skin tags, well, that happens to everybody. You must add the secret ingredients of excessive amounts of insulin to grow those skin tags.
First, let's understand what insulin is and its role in the body.
Insulin is this wonderful dictator of a hormone in your body. And again, you can't live without it. When you look at my ability to prescribe you insulin to try and, play the endocrine god within your body, we didn't have that option in 1920. It was in that era, in that decade where insulin came into our world of medicine, that we could give it to people without it. And those diabetics, those type 1 diabetics that were just emaciated. They were wasting away from the inside out because that little dictator, that little hormone is in charge of getting glucose or carbohydrate-based fuel inside your cell. And although that carbohydrate is not required in the human diet, it is, you do need this hormone to get some of that fuel in the cells. Without it, to run solely on fat, without the access to that insulin gives those cells to use some carbohydrates, you're going to die. You're going to die a very young death, and your body will eat itself from the inside out. So that's what life looks like without it. And indeed, it was a horrific death. When you look at some of the rescue missions of the 1920s and 30s where insulin came to these people who didn't have it, the doctors were the hero. They really did save their life. Our bodies make a little bit of insulin when glucose comes into our systems. In fact, they make insulin whenever food comes into our system to store certain ones for future use of that fuel, and then to be able to mobilize fuel in the right direction using the highest priority.
Now, what exactly is insulin resistance?
Insulin resistance, what does that mean? It means your body has grown resistant to the message that insulin is sending to your body. When insulin is high for too long, it stimulates growth. It makes things grow that shouldn't. That inappropriate growth causes strokes, heart attacks, and kidney failure. It ages our body at hyperspeed, causing brain or memory problems like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or other causes of dementia. Years of excess insulin causes arthritis and cancer to grow, and most patients are totally unaware.
What is the common diagnosis for insulin resistance?
You can diagnose insulin resistant from across the room in most people because it's not a subcellular or a cellular or maybe even a one organ problem. It has encompassed their body. And the outward signals of having too much weight, having swelling in their ankles, having that sluggish mind where their brain just isn't crisp, there isn't, responding as robustly as they should, especially if you get them after they eat a meal and they do that sluggish thing brains do that you're like, no. How do I make it go away?
How does one become insulin resistant?
So the beginning part of that insulin was to get the fuel in the right spots. And at the beginning of that message, there was one little listening device, one receptor that was saying, yep, my cell that I'm living in needs this fuel. But as the noise and the signal rises, the amount of insulin your body is making rises in response to the excessive amount of processed foods and carbohydrates that we're consuming. And as you added that food, as you added all of those sequential carbohydrates, you raised the production of how much insulin your body was going to make because you kept putting a bunch of carbohydrates in the blood. And your blood can only hold about a teaspoon, a heaping teaspoon worth of sugar. So every time you overate, and my gosh, they're great. They're designed to make you eat more. So you would consume more than that tablespoonful or teaspoonful of sugar. And every time you push the limit, your insulin would rise a little bit more. And it whispers. It doesn't tell you this is happening. Adults, I say, you never need to be eating that many times a day. You're just overstimulating the insulin. And to reverse your problems becomes, you're going to need me eventually if you don't reverse the problems.
Next, Dr. BOZ explains the 3 essential rules to reverse insulin resistance.
Reversing insulin resistance takes these 3 rules. Number 1, track insulin, not calories. You may have heard the rebuttal that your body does not count calories. And it's true, but it does not make you unaccountable. Instead of obsessing on calories in versus calories out, we need you to focus on how much insulin your body is producing. Your body needs just one equation to be true to put fat onto your body. It needs to have an elevated insulin while consuming food. The presence of insulin tells your body to put that energy into liver, muscle, or fat cells. Insulin is not necessarily the enemy, but it's something we're making way too much of. And as a result, we're plumping up all of those fat cells. What makes insulin rise, causing you to store fat? The types of food matter. Carbs cause the highest spike in insulin, whereas protein causes a lesser spike and fat causes the lowest spike in insulin. So that means we're eating fat first and a lot of it. Don't look at the calorie count. Remember, when you're consuming high fat, that metabolism starts to hike up. Not only does it have the lowest production of insulin, but it's the best return on energy per bite. Eating fat has the lowest amount of insulin produced. And when you consume fat in a low insulin state, it really boosts the metabolism. Again, you need the insulin to store it as fat. Without that insulin, you get to use it as energy. And that's how metabolisms get boosted on a high-fat diet. Years of chronically elevated insulin will take years to reverse. So stay focused on the high fat. So eat the fat, keep those carbs low, under 20 grams per day. Number 2, don't eat after dark. The timing of those fat-based meals has a profound impact on your insulin production. Remember that even fat produces a little bit of insulin, and so does the consumption of protein, as well as waking up in the morning. That morning rise of cortisol, where your brain intuitively knows that the sun is rising, sends a stimulus to your liver, where the production of glucose enters your body. And this spike in glucose results in a spike in insulin if you're insulin resistant. We want to front load those meals earlier in the day. Put that consumption of food in the daylight hours. The closer to sunrise, the better. Eating after sunset has a higher cost to those with insulin resistance. The longer you get between your last bite of food and the time you go to bed, the better your insulin will be the next day. And number 3, we have to measure it if we want to change it. If we want these rules to stick, we must measure the metrics so we can study the improvements. Earlier, I said the measurement of insulin is messy, and indeed it is. It's very volatile. So the best proxy for insulin is to measure the 2 molecules that it controls the most, that being glucose and ketones. Measuring glucose and ketones at the same moment helps us use that metric in combination to predict what your insulin is.
If you are insulin resistant, it's crucial to make mindful food choices. Here are the top 5 foods Dr. BOZ recommends to help reverse insulin resistance.
Number 1, eggs. You cannot go wrong by adding eggs to the ketogenic diet. The biggest pushback I have when recommending eggs are for those that might have an egg allergy. I remind them that especially if you're insulin resistant, the yolk is what you're after. And most of the time, an egg allergy is to those egg whites. You're going to find plenty of ways to get the protein higher in a ketogenic diet. With the egg, lean towards the egg yolk, using most of that if you're insulin resistant. Number 2 is fatty meat. That means bacon and sausage and pepperoni and a marbled steak. Nearly all of those meats are high in fat. And what that does to an insulin-resistant patient is it talks to your satiety center. It suppresses your hunger. And this is a key factor for those that are insulin resistant. Number 3 is butter. Not only is this great to cook your eggs with and maybe fry up some of that meat with, but it's also an excellent addition to your coffee. Butter adds short-chain fatty acids to the diet, which increases your overall ketones. So especially at the beginning, and if you're insulin resistant, this is a double thumbs up. Next, we have canned fish. And if you follow me long enough, you know that I love adding sardines to the menu, but you can also add salmon or other canned fish. If you don't like the texture of fish, consider adding some olive oil. Not only does that improve the texture, but it adds fat to the diet, which is really critical for those with insulin resistant, especially at the early stages of the ketogenic diet. Next is some hard cheese. A perfect example of this is Parmesan. Not only is this one of my favorite cheeses because it doesn't go bad very fast, but it's also a great flavor with a high fat content. Again, critical for those with insulin resistance. The final recommendation is that for insulin resistant patients, there's obviously no sugar on the list, but there is also no sugar substitutes. The only exception to that is when I'm adding ketones to their circulation. These sugar substitutes, especially in an insulin-resistant patient, tend to raise their blood sugars. And the less of that you do, the faster you will heal from this problem.
Well, that's it for today. Let us know if you would like us to discuss more on this topic. Please share your views with us in the comment section below. For now, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and do not forget to hit the bell icon to never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay healthy